I am Stephanie Sebastian. I'm an education specialist with National FFA organization, and I am the grant manager for the Food for All grant.
Thanks. Since we're videotaping this, I should say it's not like we are doing an old version of the Oprah Winfrey Show. They're just requiring us by law to keep this darn thing around. So, yeah. I'm Michael Slavkin. I'm a professor of education at Manchester University, and I work as an external evaluator for the Food for All program out of Indiana.
My name's Kevin Alm. I am the agriculture education instructor and FFA advisor in Grenada, Colorado, in the far southeast corner of the state.
My name is Christina Alm. I am currently my chapter's FFA president, and I am a senior at Grenada, Colorado, and am here to just spread the love.
So they are one of our grantees this year, and we are very excited to have them here to talk about their experience, because we can provide you a framework, but they can provide the actual experience of what they went through. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to introduce FFA. Some of you may not even know what that is, which is okay. We don't blame you, but we will inform you of what it is. Then we're going to talk to you a little bit about the program. We want you to know our results, and then we're going to talk about how we got there and how you can get there as well. So I'm going to let Christina start and introduce FFA.
Okay, for starters, do any of you in this room know what FFA is? Woo! Great. That's amazing. Because there's some people who don't know, which we're here for. FFA is the largest national student organization in the world. As you see, there are over 557,000 members in this organization. From all over the U.S., from Maine to Alaska to Hawaii, and then there's even members in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So the organization is spread all across the Americas. We also have a national convention, which this past year it was held in Indianapolis, Indiana, but this next year it'll be held in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's where over 50,000 of our members gather and go through awards and everything there, and it's really a great time where we can all get together. Our mission, it's to make a positive difference in the lives of students by developing their potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. But there's more to it. Our motto is learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. What better way to say service learning? Learning to sit, living to serve. So that's what we're all about. We are an organization to educate young people into going out into the world and making the world a better place. FFA used to be known as Future Farmers of America, but that is far gone by now. Because we're not all going to be farmers. Yes, I was raised on a farm, but that's just how my life was. You could all be. I am planning on being a veterinary, but I've yet to decide whether I want to be in a zoo environment, a rural environment where I am most comfortable, or even going on to study wildlife and deer. Who knows? But I want to be a vet, and that way I can incorporate other people into my life. FFA, it gives everybody a chance to do what they want. You could be a biologist, you could be a scientist, you could be a teacher, you could be anything you want. FFA is just your way of learning more leadership skills and learning how to interact with people. So that is why I'm an FFA. I've learned so many things, and as you see, it may not show right here, I mean, I may stutter a few times, but I've practiced so hard with public speaking that I could tell you thousands of things. But I have been in FFA, and it helps my public speaking. I know people who have gone up on stage and just look down at their feet, look at the ceiling, look everywhere, not actually at the people. FFA does that for you. It gives you the leadership skills and the public speaking skills and the people skills that you'll need in life.
We did say that the FFA is a national organization, but it doesn't just stay at the national level. In every state, we have FFA chapters, and those chapters are what we call the local level. Those are in a lot of the public schools. We've got them in some of the private schools also, but they're funded through the like a regular school. Okay. Okay. I know that we have some that are even in charter schools now. So the local chapters are made up from, they've got to have an advisor, and they have the typical classes we've got listed on here are just Introduction to Agriculture, Horticulture, Ag Communications, Ag Business, Animal Science, Plant Science, the whole realm. We go into natural resources. It depends on the local chapter, the local school, what programs are being taught in that. So it's really it's made just for your location. Not only are they in the rural areas, these local chapters and ag programs, but they're in the inner cities also. We've got one of the largest ones was in Chicago. I don't know if any of you have seen or seen that one at all. I don't know. I haven't. I got to see that we had a national president that came from there just a few years ago. So they're tailor-made, though, for that community.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing about FFA. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our grant program. Michael has handed out a sheet that we call it it's the 2012 Food for All by the numbers. And so I'm going to start with just a couple. In 2012, we funded 140 chapters in 43 states. And then this year, we funded 131 chapters in 42 states. And so these chapters are creating sustainable hunger-fighting service learning projects. And these are some of the results from our 2012 projects. So you can see there were a lot of man hours put in there. There were a lot of community partners. We donated a lot of food. We raised a lot of chickens to produce meat and eggs. The foundation of the program was really on that Chinese proverb of not only giving a man to fish, but teaching a man to fish. We want to be able to give people the skills to raise their own food or to climb out of the situation that they're in, the reason why they may be food insecure at that moment. For our projects, because we're ag, we make them do a production piece and an educational outreach piece. So the production piece may not speak to some of you. You may not be able to raise pigs and take them to slaughter. I know it's sad. But we're feeding families. So you may not be able to do that at your school, but we have some great things that have happened outside of the production pieces as well, which I hope will speak to you guys. All right, some of the main things that we've seen community gardens, we've seen backpack programs. A big one is raising chickens, like I said, broilers for meat, protein sources, eggs, fish for tilapia. We also have food rescue going on, square foot gardening. We've partnered with some organizations like Meals on Wheels. We've provided them with their fresh vegetables to give to homebound seniors. Has anyone heard of Hunters Helping the Hungry? Yes. So it's a program where you actually, hunters will donate deer that they've gone out and shot and to give them to the food bank. And so we had a chapter that partnered with them and got hunters to donate at least 2 deer to their local food banks. Yes. Food rescue, that's great. Thank you for that question. So there is a chapter that every Wednesday, the grocery store gets rid of all the produce, and they put all the new produce on the shelves. That doesn't mean the produce they're throwing away is bad. It's just not sellable by their standards now. So every Wednesday, they take their truck, they get all the produce that they're going to just throw away, and they pick it up and take it to the food bank for them. So that's what I mean by food rescue. Thank you. We are funded by Farmers Feeding the World and the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, and I just wanted to show you a website. It's a community walks map, and you can actually go through, and it's plotted across the country, as you can see, and you can actually get an abstract of each of the projects that we have. And the link is on the, oh, you know what, we could hand those out to them. Sorry about that. We have the PowerPoint for you. While they're handing out that PowerPoint, I have a short video that I want to show you, and I promise we're not going to be talking at you the whole time. We want to give you some information, then we're going to be working through activities. Promise. So we're going to start with a video that Farm Journal Media shot for us, and it highlights 5 chapters. I always, off the top of my head, Chakota in Oklahoma, Chakota FFA did a community garden. Cedar Keys in Florida did both tilapia and a garden. Ridgemont did a backpack program. Sam in Idaho did fruit tree gleaning. Does anyone know what gleaning is? Do you? Absolutely. Did everyone hear what he said? Can you repeat it for me one more time? Absolutely. So you go and you ask farmers or other people in your community in their gardens, and after they've harvested anything, you can glean what they may not be using. What they did was they actually found fruit trees in their community that nobody was doing anything with. So the fruit would just ripen, it would fall to the ground, and nobody would ever use it. And then the 5th one is in Kentucky, and they did a garden as well. All right, so now I'm going to have Kevin and Christina share the story of what they did with their project.
We started this project thinking of community service. We've talked about community service so much that that's what we thought it was. It wasn't until about 3/4 of the way through our project that we realized we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in community service learning. And that's where we were able to get our minds changed, and it also helped with our kids too. And with our project, we started off thinking of how can we impact hunger in our community. We can't actually know which ones of our community are hungry. If they're our neighbors in a community that's as large as ours, like 800, we live in a very small community. If our neighbor is hungry, we'll feed them. So it's not like we don't see a line drawn there. So what we started doing was the container gardens, where we had just a 16-inch tall container. We put a tomato plant and a pepper plant in each one, let those grow up. We took those out to senior citizens in our community. We have three different towns that are very close together in our area, and we shared with a group of senior citizens who meet together on a Monday night, and that's how we got our recipients. So we took those out to those folks, and when we started picking up those plants at the end of the year, we found out that they had not just kept those little bit of vegetables that they were able to produce, but they were able to share with their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. So we started at the older folks and went down instead of trying to find something with the kids and work up. Something that was a little unique to us that, after we got through. So we're going to do it again this year. And we've got more people saying, will you bring some to us? So we're going to double the amount that we did last year. and we'll be getting our seeds planted next week. Well, we have spring break next week. The week after, we'll be getting all of our seeds planted so we can transplant from our own little greenhouse into the containers and then out to the folks again.
Christina, did you want to add anything about the project?
This project was a great experience. It opened not only my eyes, but our whole chapter's eyes of the need for people like us to go out and help them and just be a part of their lives and just incorporate them in our lives and just go out and show them that we still care. They aren't out there by themselves. Their families haven't all left them, because in a small community, everybody's family. So we all have to take care of each other. There was a good quote that our great national organizers were able to find of one of our boys said that a highlight of this program was giving back some freedom to the people that couldn't get around anymore. Senior citizens that lived out in the country or lived in town, that we gave a physically disabled man some more freedom and responsibility of a plant, and that went a long way. He was an old man, used to drive the tractor every day of his life, but because of those years, he grew old pretty quick, and he'll tell you that. And so he walks around with a walker now, but giving him that container plant was his freedom to get out in the world again and take care of it.
And what's nice about those container gardens as well is we didn't just see them in our rural areas with, say, homebound seniors, but it's really good in urban areas, because a lot of times all they have is a patio or something. So container gardens to do patio gardening is also a great resource. So we want to talk a little bit about now the process that we went through and our chapters went through when coming up with these projects. So how many of you have heard of the I-Party model? Raise your hand if you have heard of it. All right. So the service learning steps of investigation, preparation and planning, action, reflection, and demonstration. The first three are bolded because those are the ones we're really going to hit on, especially investigation and preparation and planning. Because when we say we're moving past the canned food drive, is that we really need to look at hunger. I'm not saying canned food drives, we're not saying canned food drives are bad. They need to happen. But we can do more as well. When we have high schoolers doing only canned food drives, they can do more than collect food and count cans. Let's have some of the younger students do that. Let's see where we can get the high school students, middle school students. Let's really, truly put their skills to use. So we're going to touch on this as we go through it, and we're going to start with investigation. So you really have to understand what hunger is. You need to figure out what you already know about it. Maybe we don't know anything, because then we also need to know what don't we know about hunger in our community. Then you need to gather information, and then you need to define the problem. So I'm going to have them talk about how they did this process on their project.
I had my students in class to do a little bit of research, and they couldn't find a lot at home, but they found a lot of information across the nation. They wrote speeches, and in our ag programs, we do teach public speaking, and so those kids got to give speeches at the local level there in our own chapter. They went on to the district level, and they were able to share. Even at a regional level, we went from Oklahoma. We went down to Oklahoma from where we live, and gave some speeches down there at the Oklahoma Panhandle State University. So we spread out even farther, talking about the problem of hunger, and our kids learned so much from that they've been talking about it and wanting to do more now.
Okay, gang, we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to give you the answers to the world hunger statistics, and then we'd like to talk a little bit about the United States statistics if we could. So for number 2, you should have had 925 million people are hungry every day. 925 million. Every day, almost 17,000 children die from hunger-related causes. That's one child every 4 seconds. And in 2005, the last year of available data, 1.4 billion people lived in extreme poverty or on less than $1.25 per day.
Number 5, in round numbers, there are 7 billion people in the world. Thus, with 925 million hungry people in the world, 13%, or 1 out of every 7 people globally, are hungry. 5.05 billion people, or 80% of the world, live on less than $10 per day. 8 million of all human deaths are a result of extreme hunger-caused issues. Each year, 6.5 million children under the age of 5 die from lack of food and nutrition, about 17,000 deaths each day.
As we go through those statistics, I know one of the things that I say whenever I share with my students and we talk about big numbers, whenever I think about anything beyond, I think about the Holocaust, I think about the hungry in the world, and does anybody else have like sort of this almost out-of-body experience when you hear these numbers? I see we just can't even put that into a frame or a perspective. What state would you guess would have the number 1 rank in the United States for at risk for hunger? Okay, how many say Mississippi? You're correct. You're correct. Next state? Good job. Yeah, Arkansas. Although I don't think that's a good job. I feel kind of weird saying, good job, Arkansas. This is serious. Yeah. Yeah, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky, the District of Columbia, New Mexico. Anybody want to take a guess? Yeah, District of Columbia is actually 4th, which even though it's a district, we're still including it in this way. Which, as far as mile per mile, it's probably the most impacted group of people in the country. New Mexico, West Virginia, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, and then number 10 is South Carolina and Tennessee are tied. Does anybody find something interesting about these numbers? Lots of places east of the Mississippi and also south of the Mason-Dixon line. Don't you think there's a certain level of irony in places where we typically think of as farmland, you have the most food insecurity in the United States? It's also one of the reasons, it's the localization of poverty, that in the United States you tend to find greater incidence of poverty, which pairs with food insecurity as a result. So, very good connections there, you guys. Oh, I'm sorry. This is one of our ag teachers. We use this slide in every presentation we give because it's just so darn funny. This is an ag teacher. He's at an iPad. This is actually at a bus stop in San Francisco. It's not an actual iPad. I just think it's really funny. So, tried to lighten the mood after all the hunger statistics. Sorry. Anyway, if you guys want more information about hunger and looking at just general information, some great resources to use with students, but also in particular community members. If you're planning on doing and sort of blowing up your canned food drive, one of the things that I said to my kids did a food drive this year. My 4th grade daughter was like, we need to get cans. And I said, who are we giving cans to? She didn't know. And I said, well, you can't raid our cabinets, and we're not going to the store until you find out who we're feeding. So she hates that because I'm a teacher, and she's like, you're such a teacher, and she walked out of the room. But we gave her some of these websites. She went back to her classroom and actually informed the teacher that he really should have notified them who they were feeding, which embarrassed me to no end. But these are some great resources to just clarify when we do a food drive, when we do any of the programming that we're talking about, these are the people that we do it for. And it's not just these communities, it's even within your community. You know, putting a face on hunger for some of our kids.
Because we just wanted to point to a few. You're able to point to another one because there's a lot of statistics, a lot of research out on it. Get them out on the web, get them researching it, and then get them talking to people in their community as well. The Ag in the Classroom is nice. It's through the Department of Ag in each of your states, and it has a lot of resources on different curriculums and things. And it's not just for ag teachers, it's for any teacher to talk about ag, and they have hunger things on there as well. All right, so once we've talked about hunger kind of broadly, maybe we have a better idea, hopefully we have a better idea of it now. Now we need to dive deeper. Okay, this is how we're going to get past the canned food drive. We need to dive deep into some of the root causes of what's going on. It's shown that when you are addressing root causes of issues, your impacts are going to be stronger and more long-term, so that you truly are affecting the needs in your community. Now, I have some examples of ways you can do that. Very expensive ways. Case studies, surveys. Now, interviews and data collecting, not so expensive. Time, okay? So there are lots of different ways you can do that. Interviews are a great way. Kevin told us that he just got his students talking to people in the community, and that's how they realized, hey, our retired seniors are the hidden hungry in our community. That's who we need to work with. So how many of you are parents in here? Raise your hands. Okay, what do your kids always ask you when you, what's the one word question they always ask when you tell them an answer to something? Why? Yes, why? 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 Okay, so this next thing, has anyone heard of the 5 whys technique? It actually came from Toyota, and they were looking at how to get some of their root causes in their production lines. This was built for young kids. So basically it's you take an issue and you ask why. Why is this happening? Okay, once you have an answer, you ask why about that. Why is it happening? Until you get to some root causes. So for example, I'm going to kind of walk over here, and this is probably really tiny. But I said, we're going to have you go through an activity here, but we said senior citizens do not have access to healthy foods. Why don't they? Okay, the prices are too high in their community. They lived on fixed incomes, and they have no transportation to the food banks. So that's not just one root cause. There may be a lot of causes. So why are prices too high? Well, there's no competition in a rural community. What did Kevin said they have to drive, 40 miles round trip to get to the store? Okay, so you're not going to buy just one thing. They live on fixed incomes. Well, they receive Social Security. No transportation, they can no longer drive. Now, the second step to that is, what in here can I impact? I have liability issues with the school, so we can't really do anything with driving. So I can't really impact that. At this time, I really can't impact how much they get through Social Security. I just can't do that. But can I potentially provide them with a low-cost, no-cost option of food? Yes, I can. So this is what I'm going to focus on. So what we're going to have you do is an activity as a group again. So work with who you worked with on the worksheets. And we're going to hand out let me have one just quickly. Now, I provided 3 and then 3 down. And that was just to provide structure. If you're going to do this as a group, you may do it on a flip chart and have 15 boxes that go out and 30 down. But I just wanted to provide some structure for you. So what I want you to do is start with an issue. You decide as a table, is it senior citizens don't have food in your community? Is it children are hungry? You decide what it is and then ask why and get to some of those causes. And we'll give you 5 minutes to work through this.
Please do. So we're not going to have time to go through every single example that you guys came up with at your tables. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap once. I'm so sorry I had to do that. I will turn these lights out, people. I am an elementary teacher. We will shut out lights. No, I'm kidding. So, no, it is not nap time. Not yet, although we're probably all feeling it right about now. So we can't go through every single example that you guys came up with, but we would like to hear some of the information that you came up with. So if we could have an example group raise their hand, tell me their first why. Great, you just volunteered. All right, so what did you guys come up with? What was your issue? Okay, so our local community, Springfield, Missouri, does not have access to local healthy foods. Okay, why? Okay, we identified it costs more.
It may be easier to get fast food rather than taking the time to make a healthy meal.
Okay, so it may be that people just don't have the time.
Right, and a lot of people have like food stamps and WIC for their kids and like all that income stuff, and they may not have enough money to get it, and they might not take it.
Good, so they may be financial issues. Okay, we're going to go to the third layer, and I'm going to say why again. What of the whys that you guys came up with, are there any that you think that you could impact?
Maybe people taking the time to actually make the food
Okay.
rather than taking the easy way out and going to McDonald's and ordering gross, greasy food.
Okay, so that might be one of the strategies that you guys would be able to take. So as local high school students or just a local concerned group, you'd be able to target how quickly or the strategies that people would use to actually grow their own vegetables and then break down those vegetables into healthy meals and
Our
healthy
school,
choices.
Like, has our own greenhouse. Like we have a greenhouse.
All right, we'll talk afterwards.
We planted him.
Yes.
We I want to give you 2 examples just based off of here of ones that we've seen, and anybody could do them, not even an ag class. So one of them was we've had some classes start community farmers markets. So, getting farmers to come out and soliciting them to sell. The second part of that was they had talked about here food stamps. Well, a lot of farmers markets don't accept food stamps. Now, they're starting to, but what one chapter did was they actually solicited city council and they got them to accept food stamps. Now, the second part of that was they had to talk to the farmers about why it's okay to accept those as well. So they had to do some education and outreach. The other one was about nutrition. It was our group that was working with Meals on Wheels, and so they were giving fresh vegetables to these homebound seniors. And you know what the homebound seniors came back and said? They said, tell us how to prepare them. We can't stand at a stove. We can't cook them at a stove. Tell us how to prepare them. So that's usually that second step we don't think about. If we're giving a bunch of canned food to a food bank, a lot of times with these healthy foods, they don't know what to do, how to prepare them. So taking that next step. So we had that chapter, it was in North Carolina, actually created microwavable recipes with the vegetables to hand out to the homebound seniors. So just thinking about that second step.
And then as a science teacher, I mean, even though that doesn't sound like it may be part of your curriculum, for science, nutrition, breaking things down into component groups, talking about mathematics and organizing what percentage of water, what percentage of butter, although seniors probably less with butter, less with salt.
Well, in English language arts, great for those farmers markets with the marketing and communications that you need to do with that. All right, so once we get through the investigation piece, it's now preparation and planning. So we have a root cause, we know what we're going to do, now we got to prepare to do it. By the number sheet, what I do want to say about these projects is, although they're $2,500, we handed out about last year $330,000. But those communities in cash donations and in-kind donations raised $600,000. So they tripled the program with us. We never asked them to have one dime of matching funds. So that was pretty awesome. So now that you have your project idea, I'm going to hand it over to the evaluator to talk about measurable outcomes.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so doesn't that sound like a really cool project? I am purposefully going to force this group. I may have to move to Lamar, Colorado, so that they can actually do this. I just think it would be really powerful to see the faces on some of the next generations. I guess there's a group of Japanese that come back each year to recognize and remember. I just think it would be an awesome opportunity for them to come back and see the gardens. So one of the things that we try to emphasize with chapters is usually when you get kids excited in changing their world, the first thing they want to do is just get to it. They want to jump into it. And one of the things that we try to do with preparation and planning is to really do something that I think teachers are wonderful at, which is beginning with the end in mind. And so teachers have this old practice, which is called backward design, where we basically stop and think about, as we begin a project, how do we know that it's going to be successful? So we talk with the kids very intentionally about what is the work going to look like? How are we going to know when we're done? Is it going to be when we've raised a certain number of plants? Is it going to be that we've given out a certain number of broiler chickens? How will we know that our project is successful? And so one of the expectations is that if kids can do that at the beginning and develop a SMART goal, which we'll get to in just a second with a handout, if kids are able to actually develop those SMART goals and be very intentional in what they're looking for, the likelihood is the projects will be much more successful. And I think the kids, the students who are involved, will feel a greater sense of accomplishment if they know, oh yeah, not only did we meet our goal, we surpassed it, or we went beyond it. So SMART goals just simply mean that as we're working with people, we want those goals to be specific, measurable, attainable. I'd love it if, especially being an elementary teacher, when we would do something, they'd be like, we want to end world hunger. Well, that's super. However, in our spare time, maybe we can do that. But for this project, let's kind of narrow the scope a little bit. So do something that's realistic and then also is time-bound. One of the things I think we lose sight of is we want a project to be more than one day, but we don't often dictate what the length of a project is. So we want to make sure that the project does have some boundaries of time, either a semester or even better over the course of a year or a growing season. So in front of you guys, you have a wonderful outcomes worksheet. Did you? I think we need to, yeah.
And let me just tell you about this worksheet for 1 second. I was on a webinar, and it was about how to show your measurable outcomes. And this is the best worksheet I've ever seen for building measurable outcomes. We use it for our national organization when we're writing grants, but we also give it, anybody could use it at any level to write them. So I would highly recommend looking at this worksheet.
I'm not sure what else to say at this point.
Well, do you want to
No.
kind of walk through that?
I'll walk through it. I'm just kidding. So just very, very briefly, once you guys get that inner circle developed, then you start brainstorming and start planning and looking at what kind of direction of change do you want? Are you increasing? Are you decreasing? Is something being added to a situation or removed from a situation? What's the area of change? Talking with students about a target population. So maybe you're going to start with the local nursing home down the street, and then your ultimate goal for year 2 is going to be 3 nursing homes. Or maybe you're not going to be working on intergenerational, it's going to be community gardens, and you'll start with one particular neighborhood and work through it. What's the degree of change, and then the time frame. I will tell you, as an evaluator, this makes my heart pitter-patter, and this is a wonderful thing. I know some of you may be sitting there thinking, especially the young people, oh dear God, what is he talking about? The reality is, as you've heard the last couple days, Learn and Serve has gone away. Lots of granting people no longer support service learning. And one of the reasons is we did a crappy job of talking about the impact that these programs had on our kids. And so one of the things that we emphasize now is we have to do a much better job of clarifying and saying to our school boards, our community town councils, people in power, these are the measurables. These are the things that this did. So that by the end of a project, we can say, After this semester, we will increase the amount of fresh vegetables that senior citizens at X Senior Citizen Center eat by 5 servings per week by November of 2013. That is very, very clear. And it's something that we can track, it's something that we can measure, and it's something that we can show to people in power afterwards. I get tired of hearing about projects that are cute. And I think one of the things that we've run into is service learning has become cute. It doesn't need to be cute. Kids aren't just cute. We want to show that we have power and we have impact. And one of the ways to do that is we have to speak adult language. This is adult language.
And on the back of it, there's just also a second piece to that where you can look so you take your measurable outcome that you've built, you can put in your evaluation tool, and then you can start building the activities underneath that for how you're going to get there. So just another piece to that. Kevin was sharing us when we were talking about measurable outcomes, how one of his outcomes wasn't necessarily related to hunger, but it was to increase participation by 50%, correct? And you know what that says to him? If I can get more people involved in FFA, they're less likely to cut my ag program. So all of them don't have to be necessarily related directly to that hunger. If there are other things you need to be doing, if it's, getting students to attend class more, you can also do that as well. So think about those as your measurable outcomes as well. So we had an activity, but we always go late. We always never get through everything. So we're going to cut that activity. We're going to go to community partners. I'm going to have Kevin and Christina talk about community partners while we hand out a worksheet that I'm going to show real quickly. The first part is actually just adapted from a great resource from the National Youth Leadership Council that you can get on GSN. And then it's to think about the different organizations you can partner with. On the second side, what we've added is not only do you need to think about the different organizations, think about the different levels. Who at the local level, regional, state, national? We were talking about partners too, and he said, man, I never thought I'd be partnering with National FFA. Well, he is. So think about the different levels as well.
Thank you. We didn't have a lot of people who wanted to step forward and help us. But we started asking people, can you give us a discounted price on the things that we're going to buy? Those are the people who became our partners in seeing our project go through. And part of those was we had a farm store who helped us with getting equipment. We dealt with the Denver wholesale florist. They were able to supply us with potting soil, the containers, and gave them to us at a wholesale price, which was a whole lot cheaper than where we had been able to, we first got our numbers together looking at a retail price and what we were going to have to pay for them. They said, yeah, we would be glad to help you. And they've done that. We got these 16-inch containers that were 16 inches tall also. They're polycarbonate, and that was one of the questions that the lady in the back was asking me, is what did we get? What did we use? So we had those containers that are able to be reused year after year. All we have to do is sterilize them and start again. The soil. We came up with a potting soil that was a 25% bark, so it would be able to hold the moisture, and we had to still water morning and night. But the amount of water that those partners that we had, talk about community partners, those people that had the plants were still our partners also. Because if they let them die, so died everything else that we were trying to do. So what they did was some of those people were actually taking those plants and bringing them in the house and babying them, really, because if they could just slide them in the door and then they'd slide them back outside, and they were able to take care of those. You want me to go ahead and tell them about how we ended the project? Okay. Before frost came here in Colorado, which is different every year, we just watched the weather. And before that happened, we went out and collected all of the plants that the people would let us take back, and we brought those back to our greenhouse, and we started watering those plants, taking care of those plants for them. And this is after school had already started, so I had more kids get involved. And they said, we really like the idea of doing this. We're helping someone else out. We took those plants until December 1st, they were producing tomatoes and peppers. That was our first freeze in our little greenhouse that we had, and it dropped about 20 degrees overnight, and it was about 15 degrees in there the morning I came in, and everything looked like it was time to leave. But at that point, we had all that time picked the fruit, vegetables, taken them out to the folks that had kept them all summer long. They were still getting that fresh fruit and vegetables produced and being able to enjoy it. So your partners are not only those who help you, but those that you're helping. So, okay.
And that second question, who else in the community would care if people go hungry? It should be everyone. Everyone should be talking about it. So even if you think, oh, they don't deal with hunger, they do. Everyone should be talking about it. So don't always stick to who you think should be talking about it, because everyone should be. Because we're low in time, the other things we talk about when going through the planning process is student readiness. What do the students need to be or need to know to be prepared to do this project? So that's a big part that, if you're a youth leader in your group or if you're a teacher, what do the other students I'm working with, what do they need to know to be prepared to be part of this group, to this activity? And then timeline and activities. What are those major milestones you want to hit throughout the project? So we were talking about this with Christina, and she said the big ones were making sure we had the containers ready to hand out, making sure we knew the times to pick them up, and being able to deliver those foods. So knowing those major times, those major milestones. All right. I'm going to have you touch on curricular connections.
This is my area. I love this area, so I'm speaking to all the teachers in the audience. Again, each of you we recognize are likely not going to be agricultural educators, but the key is really, when you're talking about building a garden, it immediately evokes science. It's so easy to bring in the science standards. But you can also think of strategies, just as we started to talk about the various things that we would do. If you're talking about measuring out the number of containers you're going to have and determining how much peat moss or soil or how much water you're going to use, what does that sound like? Math. If you're talking about having the kids articulate what they're doing, brainstorm what they're doing, speak to a local organization, you can immediately bring in language arts. One of the things that I tell language arts teachers, it is the easiest way to bring in these projects. I can immediately think The Grapes of Wrath, The Good Earth, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. There are all kinds of different powerful literature pieces that immediately connect wonderfully with helping students to learn to grow in their local communities. So even if you're not farm focused, but you just want to work with some really powerful curricular pieces, having kids read some of those great examples can be wonderful.
I want to share one more example with curricular connections. One of our teachers built raised garden beds, but they built them in different shapes. So they got the elementary teachers involved in the elementary students. So not only were they were teaching the elementary students life cycles, nutrition, and their shapes because of the way that they built the raised beds. So just another way to think about it cross-curricularly. All right, so we've done investigation, we've done preparation and planning. Now it's time for action. And I love these two pictures because basically a couple of things can happen. It can be rainbows and ponies and everything can be great, or you can end up in muck up to your knees because things have happened. It's the life of service learning. Things happen. So what I want to touch on really quickly before we move to some questions, if you have any for us, is with action, if you want to, we have created a tracking tool because you can't be successful and tell your story without tracking things throughout the action period. So this is something, I don't have handouts of it because it really doesn't work as a handout. It was meant to be electronic. But what we ask our chapters to do is to track their service hours, the teachers' service hours, the community partners' service hours. Hit me. We even have an individual student tracker. Now, it's not a mobile app or anything. We're working with what we got right now. So we can print these out, give them to a student, make them track their hours for the month, and then we record them. hit me. Okay, our outcomes trackers. So you can literally type in your outcome, and then for each month of the project, you can put notes. If it's values, you can put them in there. For a community garden, if it's, knowing how much vegetables you're donating, every time you weigh it, you can put it in the tracker. And then finally, it's the donation tracker, so those in-kind and cash donations, so we can get those numbers. Because these are powerful ways to tell our story by having these numbers. So in action, when things are going great, when they're not going so great, always track what you're doing. All right, so reflection and demonstration, like I said, use both of them to tell your story and to reflect on your project and evaluate it. So with that, I think we have a little bit of time left. Yes. We have about 8 minutes for questions. Yes.
Is there a place where you can see the different projects that people have done?
Yes, so on the community walks right there, you can go to that and you can click and it'll be an abstract of all the different projects. And we also have one for our 2002 grantee, 2002. I just lost like 10 years. 2012 and 13 grantees. Yes. No, it's an Excel document. If you go to ffa.org/food for all, it's under our grantee resources, but anybody's welcome to use it. Oh, yes, right there.
I think the one thing, the blessing for me over the last couple of years has been at the end of the year, and as the chapters start their new project, I get to sit down with students and talk about what's gone well and what hasn't. I would just want to say to all the young people in here, do not be surprised if you grow stuff and it doesn't grow. Because even in the FFA chapters, and I was so grateful because I started a small garden with my kids and nothing grew. And they were like, well, what'd you plant? What's your soil like? And so they were trying to help me, and it was just a way of starting these conversations. And they were like, don't be surprised, it was a bad year for growing all the way around. So when I'm talking to people in October, that list of events and what was going on, one of the outcomes was around May, it stopped raining. And we had a very bad year for growing throughout the United States. And so it was powerful for me to just realize it didn't matter if it was Colorado or Maine or Connecticut or Missouri, everybody had the same issue. It didn't rain. And so that really can be a hardship on a gardening project.